Have you ever noticed that some people never seem worried about money? Not rich people. Not celebrities. Not business owners flying around in private jets. Just ordinary people. People with regular jobs. Regular lives. Regular incomes. Yet somehow, they're always okay financially. When their car breaks down, they handle it. When inflation rises, they adjust. When unexpected expenses appear, they don't panic. Meanwhile, someone earning twice as much can be one emergency away from disaster. How is that possible? A few years ago, a financial advisor shared something fascinating. He had two clients. The first client earned nearly $140,000 per year. The second client earned about $65,000. If you looked only at their incomes, you would assume the first client was financially secure. You would assume the second client was struggling. You would be wrong. The first client had luxury car payments, credit card debt, a large mortgage, multiple subscriptions, a lifestyle that required almost every dollar he earned. The second client drove a reliable used vehicle, had no consumer debt, saved consistently, invested automatically, and lived well below his means. One client looked wealthy. The other was wealthy. One was constantly stressed. The other slept peacefully. And that's when the advisor said something that stuck with me. He said, "Financial stability is not an income problem. It's a behavior problem." That statement explains why some people always seem to have money. It explains why some people survive economic downturns while others collapse. And it explains why so many people spend decades earning more money without ever feeling financially secure. Because financial stability isn't built by luck. It isn't built by income alone. It's built by habits. The habits you repeat every day. The decisions you make when nobody is watching. The systems you build around your money. Today, I'm going to show you the financial habits of people who always seem to have money. These are not complicated investment strategies. You don't need a finance degree. You don't need a six-figure income. And you don't need to become obsessed with budgeting. You simply need to think differently about money than most people do. And make sure you stay until the end because the final habit might be the most important one of all. It's the habit that separates people who build wealth from people who spend their entire lives chasing it. Let's begin. They understand that every dollar has two jobs. Most people think money has one purpose: to be spent. That's why payday feels exciting. Money arrives. Then immediately starts leaving. Bills. Food. Entertainment. Shopping. Subscriptions. Payments. Before long, the account balance shrinks again. And the cycle repeats. Financially stable people see money differently. They understand that every dollar has two jobs. The first job is to improve your life today. The second job is to improve your life tomorrow. Most people focus entirely on the first job. Stable people never forget the second. Imagine receiving a $1,000 bonus. One person spends it immediately. New clothes. New gadgets. A weekend getaway. Within a few weeks, the money is gone. The other person pauses. Maybe they spend a portion. But they save or invest the rest. Years later, that money has grown. Created opportunities. Reduced stress. Increased freedom. The difference isn't intelligence. It's perspective. One person saw money as something to consume. The other saw money as something that could work for them. This mindset changes everything. Because every spending decision becomes a trade-off. You're no longer asking, "Can I afford this?" You're asking, "What am I giving up to buy this?" That question is powerful. Because the answer is usually bigger than you think. That expensive purchase isn't just costing today's dollars. It's costing future options, future investments, future security, future freedom. And once you start seeing money through that lens, your financial decisions become much easier. They never upgrade their lifestyle automatically. One of the biggest financial traps in the modern world is lifestyle inflation. It's so common that most people don't even realize it's happening. You get a raise. You upgrade your apartment. You get promoted. You upgrade your car. You earn more. You spend more. You earn even more. You spend even more. And somehow, despite all your progress, your financial situation barely changes. You feel richer. But you're not actually wealthier. You're simply maintaining a more expensive life. This is one of the reasons why so many high-income earners still live paycheck to paycheck. Their expenses rise at the same speed as their income. Sometimes faster. Financially stable people break this cycle. When they receive raises, they don't immediately upgrade everything around them. Instead, they allow the gap between income and expenses to grow. And that gap becomes the engine of wealth creation. Think about it. If your income increases by $10,000 per year and your expenses increase by $9,500, your life hasn't changed much financially. But if your expenses increase by only $2,000, something powerful happens. The remaining difference starts accumulating. Month after month. Year after year. Eventually, those small differences become large financial advantages. Many people spend years trying to increase their income. Very few spend time protecting the gap. Yet the gap is where financial freedom lives. Quick pause. If you're getting value from this video so far, take a second to subscribe to Alice Invest. This channel is dedicated to helping you build wealth, achieve financial freedom, and make smarter money decisions without all the confusion and hype. And if you've ever wondered why some people seem financially stable no matter what's happening in the economy, you're going to love the rest of this video. Now let's continue. They make spending difficult and saving easy. Most people rely on willpower. That's a mistake. Willpower works for a few days. Maybe a few weeks. But eventually life happens. You get stressed. You get tired. You get emotional. And suddenly that financial discipline disappears. Financially stable people understand something important. Environment beats willpower almost every time. Instead of trying to force themselves to make perfect decisions, they build systems that make good decisions easier. For example, they automate savings. They automate investments. They remove stored payment methods from shopping websites. They unsubscribe from marketing emails. They delete shopping apps they don't need. Why? Because every obstacle between you and unnecessary spending increases the likelihood that you'll keep your money. Companies spend billions of dollars making spending effortless. One click. One tap. One swipe. Financially stable people intentionally move in the opposite direction. They create friction. And that friction protects them from impulse decisions. Meanwhile, saving becomes automatic. The money moves before they even see it. Which means they don't have to decide whether to save. The decision was already made. And over time, those automated systems create extraordinary results. Not because they're complicated, but because they're consistent. They stop trying to look successful. This might be uncomfortable. But it's true. A surprising amount of spending has nothing to do with need. And everything to do with appearance. People buy bigger cars. Luxury brands. Expensive watches. Designer clothing. Not because those things dramatically improve their lives. But because those things communicate a message. A message that says, I'm successful. The problem is that appearances are expensive. And they're never satisfied. Because there will always be someone with a bigger house, a newer car, a more expensive lifestyle. The comparison never ends. Financially stable people eventually realize something liberating. Most people aren't paying nearly as much attention to you as you think. They're busy thinking about themselves. The stranger who notices your car today will probably forget about it tomorrow. But the payment remains. Month after month. Year after year. The same thing happens with luxury purchases of every kind. The attention disappears quickly. The financial obligation stays. That's why stable people focus on actual financial strength rather than financial appearance. Because real confidence doesn't come from what you show people. It comes from knowing you can handle life's challenges without falling apart financially. And that's a completely different kind of wealth. Before we move on to the next habit, I want you to think about something. Imagine two people. Both lose their jobs tomorrow morning. Neither sees it coming. Neither has time to prepare. The first person immediately starts panicking. They have bills due next week. Credit card balances. Car payments. Rent. Subscriptions. Insurance. And barely enough money in the bank to survive the month. The second person isn't happy about losing their job. But they aren't panicking either. They have savings. They have options. They have time. One person experiences a financial emergency. The other experiences an inconvenience. The difference isn't income. The difference is preparation. And that leads us directly to the next habit. They protect cash flow like their life depends on it. Most people focus on income. Financially stable people focus on cash flow. Because income can be high while cash flow is terrible. You've probably seen it before. Someone earns a great salary. Maybe even 6 figures. Yet somehow they're always stressed. Always behind. Always waiting for the next paycheck. Why? Because nearly every dollar is already spoken for. The money arrives. And immediately leaves. Mortgage. Car payments. Insurance.l. Subscriptions. Debt. Lifestyle expenses. By the time the dust settles, there's almost nothing left. On paper, they're successful. In reality, they're trapped. Financially stable people understand something most people never learn. Money doesn't create freedom. Cash flow creates freedom. The less of your income that is committed to obligations, the more control you have over your life. This is why financially stable people are extremely careful about recurring expenses. Notice I didn't say large expenses. I said recurring expenses. Because recurring expenses are sneaky. A one-time purchase hurts once. A recurring payment hurts every month. And eventually becomes invisible. That's the danger. People don't wake up one day overwhelmed by bills. They get there gradually. A new subscription here. A financing agreement there. A monthly membership. Another payment plan. Another recurring charge. Then suddenly they're carrying hundreds or even thousands of dollars in obligations every month. And they barely remember signing up for half of them. Financially stable people constantly ask themselves, if my income stopped tomorrow, how many of these expenses would still exist? The answer tells you everything you need to know. Because true financial stability isn't about making money. It's about needing less of it. They build financial shock absorbers. Have you ever noticed how wealthy people seem less stressed during crises? It's not because bad things don't happen to them. It's because they've prepared for them. Think about a car. Without shock absorbers, every bump in the road feels violent. Every pothole becomes a problem. Every imperfection creates discomfort. Financially stable people build shock absorbers into their financial lives. Those shock absorbers come in the form of emergency savings. Because life is incredibly predictable in one way. Unexpected things always happen. Your car will eventually need repairs. Appliances eventually break. Medical expenses eventually appear. Something eventually goes wrong. That's not bad luck. That's life. Yet most people act surprised every time it happens. They treat predictable emergencies like unpredictable disasters. And because they aren't prepared, they rely on credit cards, loans, debt. Financially stable people refuse to play that game. They know emergencies are coming. They just don't know when. So they prepare before they arrive. Here's what's fascinating. An emergency fund doesn't just protect your money. It changes your behavior. When you have savings, you negotiate differently. You make decisions differently. You sleep differently. You stop feeling desperate. And desperation is expensive. Desperate people accept bad jobs, bad deals, bad financial decisions. Because they don't have options. Savings create options. And options create confidence. That's why financially stable people don't see emergency funds as cash sitting around doing nothing. They see them as insurance against panic. And that's one of the best investments you'll ever make. If you're finding value in this video, make sure you're subscribed to Alice Invest. Because most financial advice focuses on getting rich. But on this channel, we focus on something even more important. Becoming financially strong. Because when you're financially strong, wealth becomes much easier to build. Now let's continue. Decide what enough looks like. This habit might be the most underrated financial skill in existence. Because most people never do it. They never define enough. And that's a dangerous mistake. Imagine running a race. But nobody tells you where the finish line is. You keep running. And running. And running. You get exhausted. But you never arrive. That's how many people live financially. They earn more. Then want more. Then earn more. Then want more. The goalposts keep moving. And satisfaction stays out of reach. Here's the problem. If you don't define enough, the world will define it for you. Advertisements will define it. Social media will define it. Neighbors will define it. Co-workers will define it. And all of them benefit from convincing you that what you have isn't enough. Think about how often we're told to upgrade your phone. Upgrade your car. Upgrade your house. Upgrade your wardrobe. Upgrade your lifestyle. The message is always the same. More. 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 But financially stable people eventually realize something powerful. There is no finish line hidden inside consumption. Because enough is never found. It's decided. The moment you decide what enough looks like, everything changes. Suddenly you stop chasing. You stop comparing. You stop feeling behind. Because you're no longer playing someone else's game. You're playing your own. And that's where financial peace begins. Not when you become rich. But when you stop needing more to feel complete. They understand the difference between wealth and spending. Let me ask you a question. If someone spends $5,000 today, did they become wealthier? Most people instinctively say yes. After all, they bought something. They acquired something. They upgraded something. But spending and wealth are not the same thing. In fact, they're often opposites. This misunderstanding is responsible for countless financial mistakes. People feel wealthier because they're spending, not because they're building wealth. That's a dangerous illusion. Imagine two people. One buys a luxury vehicle. The other buys shares in a diversified investment portfolio. 10 years later, which purchase is more likely to increase their financial security? The answer is obvious. One purchase consumed resources. The other created resources. Yet emotionally, spending often feels more rewarding in the moment. That's why people struggle. Because the rewards of spending are immediate. The rewards of wealth building are delayed. And humans naturally prefer immediate gratification. Financially stable people train themselves to think differently. They stop asking, "What can this money buy?" and start asking, "What can this money become?" That question changes everything. Because money has potential. Every dollar can be consumed. Or it can be multiplied. Every dollar can create temporary pleasure. Or long-term freedom. Every dollar represents a choice. And financially stable people become extremely protective of those choices. Because they understand something most people discover too late. The goal isn't to spend money. The goal is to create a life where money is no longer a source of stress. And that requires thinking beyond today. It requires thinking beyond next month. It requires thinking years ahead. Because the people who always seem to have money aren't necessarily smarter. They simply think further into the future than everyone else. Before we get to the final habit, I want to tell you something that most people never realize. Financial stability is not just a financial condition. It's a psychological condition. Two people can have the exact same amount of money in the bank. One feels secure. The other feels anxious. One feels prepared. The other feels behind. The difference often isn't their bank account. It's the way they think. And that's where the next habit becomes incredibly important. They don't use spending as emotional therapy. This habit quietly separates financially stable people from almost everyone else. Most people believe they spend because they need things. But that's rarely the full story. Often, people spend because of how they feel. They spend when they're stressed. They spend when they're bored. They spend when they're lonely. They spend when they're frustrated. They spend when they feel unsuccessful. The purchase becomes emotional relief. For a moment, it works. You feel excited. You feel better. You feel rewarded. Then reality returns. The excitement fades. The item becomes normal. And the financial consequences remain. This creates a dangerous cycle. Stress leads to spending. Spending creates financial pressure. Financial pressure creates more stress. More stress leads to more spending. And the cycle continues. Many people spend years trapped inside this loop without recognizing it. Financially stable people eventually break the cycle. They learn to separate emotions from financial decisions. That doesn't mean they never enjoy their money. It doesn't mean they never buy anything fun. It simply means they understand the difference between intentional spending and emotional spending. Think about the last major purchase you made. Would you have made the same decision if you waited 3 days? A week? A month? Many purchases wouldn't survive that test. Because they weren't solving a real problem. They were solving a temporary emotion. Financially stable people understand this. That's why they pause. They create space. They allow emotions to settle before making decisions. And that simple habit prevents thousands of dollars from quietly disappearing every year. The hidden cycle that keeps people broke. Now let's talk about something that almost nobody discusses. There are actually two financial cycles. One builds wealth. The other destroys it. And every person watching this video is currently inside one of them. The first cycle looks like this. You spend less. You save more. Your savings grow. You feel more secure. Because you feel secure, you stop seeking comfort through spending. You spend less. You save more. The cycle keeps reinforcing itself. Over time, your financial life becomes stronger and stronger. But there is another cycle. And it's far more common. You spend too much. Your savings remain low. You feel financially insecure. Because you feel insecure, you seek temporary relief through spending. You spend even more. Your savings remain low. The insecurity grows. And the cycle continues. Year after year. Most people think financial success is about making more money. Sometimes it is. But often it's about choosing which cycle
Every
you're
financial
feeding.
decision either strengthens the positive cycle or strengthens the negative one.
That's why financial stability is built gradually. One habit. One decision. 1 month at a time.
If you're still watching, you're exactly the type of person we're building Alice Invest for.
People who aren't looking for shortcuts. People who want real financial freedom.
People who understand that wealth is built through habits, not hype.
So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do.
Because every week we break down the psychology, strategies, and habits that help ordinary people achieve extraordinary financial results.
Now let's get to the final habit.
They measure wealth by freedom, not possessions.
This habit changes everything. Most people measure wealth incorrectly.
They measure it by what they own.
The house. The car. The clothes. The gadgets.
The visible signs of success.
Financially stable people use a different measurement.
They measure wealth by freedom. Freedom to leave a job they hate.
Freedom to take time off. Freedom to handle emergencies. Freedom to help family members. Freedom to move. Freedom to retire earlier. Freedom to choose. Because at its core, money is not the goal. Money is a tool. Freedom is the goal. Think about it. What good is a luxury lifestyle if it requires constant stress to maintain? What good is a beautiful house if you're terrified of missing a payment? What good is a prestigious lifestyle if you're trapped in a job you hate? Those aren't signs of freedom. They're signs of dependency.
Financially stable people understand that every dollar saved creates future options.
Every investment creates future flexibility.
Every financial habit creates future freedom.
And freedom is one of the few things in life that becomes more valuable as you get older. This perspective changes spending completely.
Suddenly, every purchase has a new question attached to it.
Not, can I afford this? But, will this increase my freedom or reduce it? That question is powerful. Because it cuts through marketing.
It cuts through social pressure.
It cuts through impulse. Let's go back to
and
the story
forces
we
you
started
to focus
with.
on what truly matters.
The two people.
One earning nearly $140,000 a year.
The other earning less than half of that. At first glance, it seemed obvious who would be financially secure. But income wasn't the deciding factor. Habits were. One person built a lifestyle that consumed everything. The other built a system that created stability. One chased appearances. The other chased freedom. One focused on spending. The other focused on building. And over time, those choices created completely different outcomes. That's the lesson most people miss. Financial stability isn't something that suddenly appears when you reach a certain income level. It's something you build. One decision at a time. One habit at a time. One paycheck at a time. The people who always seem to have money aren't necessarily luckier than everyone else. They simply follow a different set of rules. They protect cash flow. They avoid lifestyle inflation. They build savings. They think long term. They define enough. They separate emotions from spending. And most importantly, they understand that the ultimate purpose of money is not to impress people. It's to create freedom. Because at the end of the day, the wealthiest person in the room is not always the one with the most possessions. It's the one with the most options. The one with the ability to choose. The one who can live life on their own terms. That's real financial success. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below and tell me, which of these habits do you think has the biggest impact on financial stability? And if you're serious about building wealth, increasing financial freedom, and becoming financially unshakable, subscribe to Alice Invest and join our growing community. Remember, don't focus on looking wealthy. Focus on becoming financially free.